Walt Disney's Pinocchio, a little golden book. Adapted by Eugene Bradley Coco. Illustrated by Ron Diaz. One night, long ago, the evening star shone down across the dark sky. Its beams formed a shimmering pathway to a teeny village whose humble little homes lay deep in sleep. Only one house still had a light burning in the window, and that was the workshop of Geppetto, a kindly old wood carver. He was busily carving a puppet out of wood. "At last he's finished," cried Geppetto, as he held the wooden boy high in the air. "Oh, the only thing left to do now," said Geppetto to the puppet, "is to give you a name. Let's see. Well, I shall call you Pinocchio." "Oh, what a grand name for such a handsome boy," Jiminy Cricket said with a chirp. But Geppetto's happiness soon faded, for deep in his heart he wished that Pinocchio were a real boy. From his bed, Geppetto looked out into the night and saw the bright evening star. "Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I might have the wish I make tonight." And with all his heart, Geppetto wished that Pinocchio were a real boy. Then Geppetto drifted off to sleep. Just then, a flash of light burst across the sky as a fairy flew straight from the evening star into Geppetto's house. "Good Geppetto," whispered the blue fairy, "you have given so much happiness to others. You deserve to have your wish come true." Then, with a wave of her wand, the blue fairy brought Pinocchio to life. Jiminy Cricket watched in amazement, and Pinocchio began to walk and talk. Am I a real boy?" Pinocchio asked the blue fairy. "No, Pinocchio," she answered. "First you must prove yourself to be brave, truthful, and unselfish. You must also learn to choose between right and wrong." "But how will I know what's right or wrong?" he asked. "Your conscience will tell you," said the blue fairy. "What's a conscience?" asked Pinocchio. "Well, that's the small voice that people don't always listen to," Jiminy Cricket answered with a chirp. "Yes," said the blue fairy, and she made Jiminy Cricket kneel down before her, and she dubbed him Pinocchio's official conscience. It was his job to see that Pinocchio only did what was right. Then the blue fairy vanished. When Geppetto awoke, he could not believe his eyes. "My wish has come true!" he shouted. "Pinocchio is alive!" Although Geppetto soon realized that Pinocchio was still made out of wood, it mattered little to him. "I shall love you just the way you are." Then he explained that Pinocchio must go to school, like all boys. And so, that very morning, Pinocchio happily set off. Pinocchio hadn't gone very far when Gideon, a cat, and Foulfellow, a sly fox, saw him. Foulfellow thought, "A wooden boy with no strings. I'll bet Stromboli the puppeteer would pay a pretty price for him." Foulfellow convinced Pinocchio that acting was the life for him and sold him to Stromboli. That night, after Pinocchio had performed to rounds of applause, Stromboli locked him away in a cage. "How am I ever going to get out of this horrible place?" sobbed Pinocchio. Just then a voice called out, "Don't worry, Pinocchio, I'll save you." It was Jiminy Cricket. He pulled, pushed, and shook the lock, but he couldn't get Pinocchio out. Suddenly the blue fairy appeared once more. "Pinocchio, why didn't you go to school?" she asked. I was brought here by a big green monster who was going to cook me up for his supper," he lied. Pinocchio's nose began to grow and grow. "You're lying, Pinocchio," said the blue fairy, "and it's as plain as the nose on your face." "Oh, please give him one more chance," pleaded Jiminy Cricket. "I'll make sure he never lies again." "One more chance, that's all you'll have," said the blue fairy, and she set Pinocchio free. He promised never to lie again and headed straight for school. But on the way, Pinocchio was stopped by Foulfellow once more.
Where are you going on such a fine day?
He said with a sneer. To school, replied Pinocchio.
Ha ha! School is no place for a boy like you, said Foulfellow, laughing. Well, if you follow me, I'll show you a place that's much more fun. Pleasure Island.
Don't go, Pinocchio, warned Jiminy Cricket. But Pinocchio did not listen, and before he knew it, Foulfellow had sold him to a mean old driver of the Pleasure Island stagecoach. The coach was pulled by 6 unhappy donkeys. The coachman went from village to village, buying up all the boys he could. Once the coach was full, he headed to the ferry bound for Pleasure Island. Pinocchio sat beside a loudmouth boy named Lampwick.
Yeah, don't worry about a thing,
Lampwick said with a chuckle.
Once we get to Pleasure Island, we won't have to listen to anyone or worry about what's right or wrong.
On Pleasure Island, Pinocchio forgot everything the Blue Fairy had told him. He fought with other boys, smoked corncob pipes, tossed rocks through windows, and yelled and screamed with all his might. Then he followed Lampwick down Tobacco Lane to the pool hall. "Oh, this is a great place, Lampwick!" shouted Pinocchio. But as Pinocchio turned to his friend, he could not believe his eyes. Lampwick had suddenly grown long ears and a tail. Lampwick had turned into a donkey. Pinocchio felt the top of his head and looked down at his behind. He, too, had sprouted donkey's ears and a tail. Now he knew where the coachman got his tired, sad-looking donkeys. "Come with me before it's too late!" cried Jiminy Cricket, who had quietly followed Pinocchio to Pleasure Island. As fast as they could, Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket ran through the gates of Pleasure Island and jumped off the cliffs into the sea. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket swam all the way back to land and rushed to Geppetto's house. But when they arrived, Geppetto was gone. "Maybe something awful's happened to him," cried Pinocchio. Just then, a beautiful white dove dropped a note from high in the sky. "It's from Geppetto," said Jiminy Cricket, "and it says he went looking for you and was swallowed by a whale named Monstro. He's alive, but he's trapped inside the whale." "I must find him!" cried Pinocchio. Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket leapt into the sea to start their search. Soon they spotted Monstro and got as close as they could to the snoring whale. Suddenly Monstro opened his eyes and mouth and gulped down a school of fish. Pinocchio was swallowed along with them. Inside the well, Geppetto was fishing. He felt a tug on his line and reeled it in. Pinocchio was at the other end. "My son, my son!" shouted Geppetto. "I thought I'd never see you again." "I missed you so, father," said Pinocchio. "I've been a bad boy, and I'm sorry." "Well, that's all right, my son," said Geppetto. "The important thing is for all of us to get out of here safely." "I have an idea," cried Pinocchio. "Let's build a fire. It'll make Monstro sneeze us right out of here." So they built a fire, and the smoke tickled Monstro's nose until he let out a huge sneeze. Pinocchio and Geppetto were sent flying out onto the sea in their teeny raft. But then Monstro came charging after the raft. Soon Monstro caught up with the raft and splintered it with one blow of his powerful tail. Geppetto was sinking. "Never mind about me," he cried. "Save yourself, my boy." But Pinocchio swam back to Geppetto and helped him stay afloat. Geppetto was washed safely ashore, but Pinocchio did not fare so well. Geppetto found him lying in the water among the rocks, lifeless. Geppetto took Pinocchio home, and as he wept, a soft voice said, "Pinocchio, you have proved yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish. Now you will be a real boy." Pinocchio moved and blinked his eyes. He was alive and no longer wooden. Geppetto danced for joy. Jiminy Cricket was happy too. In Pinocchio, he had sure proof that when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true.